Hello, everybody.
Hello, we're back.
How are you doing today?
How am I doing today? How are they doing today?
How are you doing today?
How am I doing today? I'm doing pretty good. I started this new practice of keeping my phone on do not disturb until at least 10 a.m. and it's really been helping my mental peace the past couple of days, so I don't have any complaints. Yeah.
That is good.
How are you doing today?
I'm kind of tired, but I'm doing pretty good. I haven't really um done too much today. Let's have kind of prepare for this and the kids. So at this moment in time, I am still trying to get it up on Facebook. So bear with me, everybody, on the YouTube. I know.
Okay, that makes sense. I was checking for the Facebook, so you
Yeah,
know, we'll
we're
just chill
getting
here. Yes. One of these days, very soon, we will get it all together the first time. But until that happens, yeah, just bear with us as we learn technology.
I figured it out. I have. So it's starting. There we go. It is up on the Facebook now. Hello, everybody. I am
Please.
Hunsi Ferdasi, goddaughter of Mambo Soleil, member of Vision of Dawn Tour, and I am a full spectrum doula. I like to think of myself as a divine feminine healer, as I specialize in healing the divine feminine, connecting to your womb, healing the womb, and um, balancing the divine masculine. And my co host, Hunsi Lovana, is, can you
Hi.
introduce?
Yes, I am introducing myself. Hi, I am Punti Lavana. I almost said Ferdasi, Jesus. It's that kind of Friday, y'all. Hi, I am Punti Lavana. I am goddaughter of Mambo Soleil, member of Vision of Dantor. I am a spiritual teacher. I am a Reiki practitioner. I am a dream alchemist, and I'm excited to be here today.
Yes. I did forget that too in my like mini titles. I am a Reiki master. We both teach and teach Reiki, and we heal through Reiki. Reiki is a wonderful thing. Um, Today, we wanted to talk about sovereignty of self, the accountability and growth on the Empress Journey. So, we wanted to talk a little bit more about what the Empress Journey actually is, as we did speak on that a little bit last week, but very similarly to the Fool's Journey, in the tarot, where the Fool is on a path of personal and spiritual development. And that's illustrated through the 23 major arcana, and there's lessons the Fool learns. So, very similarly, through the Empress Journey, as we have coined, there's lessons in each one of the queens. So, the Empress in Tarot is the archetype of abundance, nurturing, and creative expression. She embodies the energies of fertility, growth, and the loving, unconditional presence of the mother or the divine feminine. She's associated with nature and the cycles of life. Um, she represents an empowered state where one can give and receive love freely, connect with their inner creative sources, and foster new ideals. Um, she's the ruler of the material and emotional realms, and she holds the wisdom and maturity of each one of the tarot queens. And so, through integrating all of the aspects of the queens in the balanced way, we get the Empress. And so, Lovana, why did we choose the Empress journey versus the High Priestess journey?
Yeah, so, I was thinking about this the other day in the sense that, like, we're priestesses, and so, some people might think that it would be natural to just lean into that in terms of like the high priestess journey. But there's something in the journey of the Empress that one is a journey that you're going to take, whether or not you decide to become a priestess in whatever practice or spiritual practice you're doing or not. But the Empress journey, like, it also impacts how you show up as a priestess, but how you show up in your community, how you are like it impacts your like day-to-day interactions. Whereas the high priestess, sometimes, like, conceptually, like, you can acquire all of this spiritual knowledge, but how you show up as the Empress is how you are going to apply it. It's how you're going to disseminate it to other people. And it's really important to do the work of the Empress journey, because a lot of the times what happens in the spiritual community is that, like, people can sometimes get enamored with the status of having all of the spiritual knowledge, of having the title, of like being in their high priestess energy, um, and they're not doing any type of shadow work, and they might find themselves in kind of like this bubble where they're not interacting with people the right way. They're not receptive to feedback, and so they might be using their spiritual gifts in a way that's actually counterproductive to how what their actual purpose is, or it's counterproductive to the rest of the community. And so it's really important to do the Empress work on top of the High Priestess work.
Totally agree. Welcome, Oshun Kimbi. All is one. I'm so glad you've joined us today. Um, so, like I was saying, each queen teaches an essential lesson in self awareness, emotional intelligence, personal power, and groundedness. So, I just want to break down each lesson of the queen a little bit. Now, we are going to go through each one of the queens through these episodes that we're having, but to break them down further, the Queen of Wands, she brings us the lesson of passion, confidence, and authentic self expression. She's the master of self belief. She embodies charisma, ambition, and the courage to live boldly. So she teaches the lesson of connecting to one's inner fire, expressing oneself unapologetically, and taking inspired action without fear of judgment. And through her, we learn to own our own power, embrace our unique identity, and create joyfully and confidently. And the Queen of Cups, she teaches us about emotional depth and intuition and compassion. So this queen rules the realm of the heart. She represents empathy and sensitivity and the ability to connect deeply with others. She teaches the importance of nurturing one's emotions and trusting one's intuition. And so through her, we learn the value of like being vulnerable and the ability to be understanding and compassionate. So, both for ourselves and for others. And this emotional maturity allows us to navigate relationships with empathy and discernment. I
So
think
real
Jimmy.
quick, I also wanted to add in terms of the Queens of Wands, it's it really impacts like how you take up space. Like, one, giving your permission to take up space. I feel like that is something, especially like women in general, are sometimes, praised the least space they take up, like in terms of size, in terms of opinions, and then adding another layer as Black women, it's like, okay, like, if I'm too bold, if I'm too opinionated, then I'm characterized a certain way, right? Like I am too aggressive, right? And so like the Empress, not the Empress, the Queen of Wands, I think is particularly important to us in terms of navigating that balance and still having the confidence to show up, even when the world is encouraging Black women to kind of do the opposite in that regard. And then, in terms of the Queen of Cups, it was when you were talking about like the emotional maturity and compassion. And again, it made me think of like it's really important in the priestess journey to have that because there's going to be like you can be a high priestess, but you are also going to end up working with other people at some point, whether that is even just your family or your community. And so it is important to show up with empathy and emotional intelligence in certain situations. Um, and then we can just go right into the Queen of Swords unless you had any other commentary or thoughts about those two.
No, not yet. But yeah, so the Queen of Swords brings us clarity, truth, and intellectual wisdom. The Queen of Swords embodies mental acuity, independence, and clear communication. She teaches the power of discernment, the necessity of boundaries, and the courage to live authentically and honestly. Her wisdom is often hard earned through like our life's challenges, giving a keen insight and strength to cut away what no longer serves us. Her lesson is to honor one's truth and to use intellect to navigate life's complexities with integrity and focus. While the Queen of Pentacles, she teaches us about groundedness, abundance, and practicality. So the Queen of Pentacles is like master of the physical realm. She symbolizes resourcefulness, stability, and nurturing both the body and the environment. And I think that's very important because a lot of times when we think of the Pentacles, we only think of the money, but it's also earth based, very much about our body and our environment. And she teaches the importance of being grounded, of being practical and mindful of one resources. So through her, we learn to create a secure and comfortable life, and to take care of our physical needs and cultivate abundance in a way that honors the earth and the interconnectedness of all things. So by embodying all the lessons of each one of these queens, we're able to cultivate a blend of confidence, empathy, clarity, and stability. And this is essential for the qualities of the Empress. Um, the Empress is the culmination of all these energies. And to me, I like to think of her as the Proverbs 31 woman. That's something I'll flesh out in the future, but it reminds me of when I was a little girl. I was in middle school and I was coming up with an email address and I was like, Proverbs 31 star is going to be my email. And my dad asked me, he was like, are you a Proverbs 31 woman? And I was like, I want to be. I would love to be. And so I talked about last week how like I kind of shunned all things Christianity for a while, and now I'm integrating the Bible back in to my practice. And I realized in taking this Empress journey are trying to learn to embody the things of the Empress. I am still trying to embody being a Proverbs 31 woman.
That's so interesting. There are certain things I've noticed, like there's certain dreams or aspirations that we have that like we can completely throw away, like because you're like, okay, I'm done with Christianity. I'm done with, in your head you're like, I'm done with trying to align myself with Psalms 31, and then it just kind of just life is just funny like that. It just kind of like loops around. There are certain like I've noticed that where like certain dreams, things that you're really meant to do, you're
Mm-hmm.
going to in some way or another like always come back to that thing if that's your purpose, and your life is going to give you opportunities to do that again and again. But I also wanted to ask you, I know you're going to go into it a little bit deeper, but for some people who might not be as familiar, what is a Psalms 31 woman?
So it's Proverbs. Proverbs 31 woman
Proverbs.
is when you think of what a mother should be, what a wife should be from a biblical standpoint, that is kind of where you would go and read. She takes care of her family. She knows how to go out and purchase the quality items. She cares about her appearance. So all of those things that we would see embodied in the Empress, we would find there listed in the book of Proverbs of how women should show up, I would say, are the Proverbs 31. The virtuous woman should show up. And yeah. Hey, Aja, nice to see you. So, I would say, okay, in terms of the queens, I would say that a lot of times I used to show up in tarot, like when I did a spread, or when I was learning about tarot, and I was like, huh, I feel like I relate the most with the Queen of Cups, right? So, like, the Queen of Cups would come up upright, reverse, depending on how I was at that moment in time, as a representative of me. And then, like, in a reading later on, I learned that I needed to start seeing myself and showing up as the Queen of Wands. So my Empress journey right now, my focus is to show up more authentically, to own my personal power, to take up space, right? So would you say that there are any or have there been a queen of the tarot that you show up as, or that you are working towards embodying at this time?
Yeah, so in terms of the one queen that I think that I've really embodied like throughout my life is probably going to be more of the Queen of Swords. I tend to be like really tactful and strategic, even in my general communications. But I really just like to sit and plan and think things out, and even support other people and whatever their journeys are, and like really helping them like build out a path for that. And I think that that's a way that the Queen of Swords is able to nurture other people, is helping them to see other things clearly and in different lights. And then in terms of, the queen in the area of personal growth, um, similarly, I would say also the Queen of Wands. I'm also right now going through my Saturn return, which is again like all about that particular journey is similar to the Queen of Wands in that the Saturn return is about like becoming who you're meant to be and expressing yourself and like showing up in the world accordingly. And so I think that I'm working on similar things. One of the things that I have been doing or that I have done in order to become more comfortable with taking up space is like that's what my red hair is about, is just like immediately, right? Like the fire, the wands, it's just like right away, like bam. Like even if I don't say anything, if you look over, you're gonna notice this. Um, but I think what is really interesting between the both of us is that we're actually fire signs. Both of us are fire signs. Both of us are Aries, and it's really interesting that we both are, in that journey of the Queen of Wands specifically. This is. Do you think? Let me see if I can try to reword my question. I have a question for you, in regards to that. Do you think that a lot of what what we're currently like working through, what we're working to embody, um, is just us coming into who we like, just trying to show up as Aries? Because when I go back to what I said earlier about how like Black women are traditionally encouraged to like take a step back and not show up as fiercely and as as charismatic because they get labeled as aggressive. Do you feel like, if you were to reflect on your life, like do you feel like there were times where that was discouraging you, and that might be one of the reasons that now you're working towards becoming a Queen of Wands.
Hi, Mambo. Um, I wouldn't say. Do you mean like in terms of like being an Aries and like just all that, and people are like, "You're too much, back away,"
I,
or
we could do like that, or just in general, like bringing it back to the Queen of Wands.
uh, not really. I was always very, very shy. I was always like super. Matter of fact, in the first grade, second grade, one of those grades, they thought I had some type of social developmental issue because I preferred playing by myself and I would just be off in the woods because there were woods and I'd just be off by myself. I never really cared to play with other kids my age and integrate, but like during times when it was time to like go in front of people and give speeches and present my work to the class, I would cry or I'd have a very difficult time being in front and taking up attention. So I think it was like I was like that already. And then when I would try to put myself out there, because this was something that people encouraged me to do my entire life. Like go try to make friends, go in that group of people, and everything like that. So I think those times when I tried, I felt like, oh, it's too awkward, or I'd get made fun of, or those situations. So it reinforced the need for me to just shut back down and hide. And so, like in terms of when I came into um, spirituality and hoodoo. And it was like, this is who you're meant to be. This is who your higher self and your ancestors and the spirit guides want you to be. It's the same lesson. And I think that's interesting to find out is that like the same thing that they were trying to teach me as a 7-year-old, now spirit is trying to teach me as a 33-year-old, and it's like this is it's not only just a one place one setting type of thing. This is a life lesson, right? This is, and it's okay to be bold and to be audacious and to be authentically yourself. um and and that is why I named Exceptionally You what it is, because that is my model. And as I'm learning and I'm healing, that's how I want to help other women to just be authentically themselves and not to be afraid of it. Yeah. What about you?
I
Would you
love
say?
that. Well, like, as you were talking, and I know we've talked about this before about like our paths being really similar in that regard, as far as just like growing up as being like really shy or like not really interacting with people. And like similarly, like when I would finally like try to show up in a certain way, but it would backfire a lot. And I'm like, again, reinforcing, yeah, maybe I should just keep to myself, right? Um, and that's something I think that I'm still working through. Mambo says what we resist persists.
Yes.
Um, yes, which goes back to what you were talking about in terms of, it just being a lifelong lesson. And it's going to show up a certain way until it clicks for us, right? But I really wanted us to explore this. And I asked this question because it's part of the work in the Empress Journey, to sit there and reflect on, I mean, I guess, you know, you can call it shadow work if you want, as far as like sitting and reflecting on the past to kind of figure out like how did I get here, and from there like what are some things that I can change to kind of help me where I'm going. So that's why I asked you that, just curious, in terms of like previous reflections you might have done. But yes, part of the Emperor's journey is sitting back and reflecting, like I said. And there's also a part of the reason that we also said like the sovereignty piece about like personal responsibility and accountability in your journey as an empress, in your journey as a priestess, and even as a practitioner of African traditional religion in general. There's a certain amount of personal accountability that you have to have. And part of being the empress is learning how to balance that. Um, because African traditional religion, or you is an oral tradition, right? Where we are, expected to go and learn from elders. And but at the same time, there's that piece where we have to, like, they can only teach us so much. They're not going to hold your hand. And so you have to be accountable for your own learning and your own journey. And so there's a balance that exists there that I think the Empress also holds. And um, yeah, like, what does that look like for you in terms of the balance between, you know, being a student and versus having to take that personal accountability in driving your own development and your own learning?
Mm-hmm. Um, for me, it has kind of shaped itself differently, right? Like in the beginning, I think when you leave a Abrahamic religion or something similar, where you're just kind of being taught about the Bible and taught this is how you should be, etc., etc. There's kind of like that expectation where you're still like, okay, I need someone to tell me every week that this is how I behave in this tradition, right? And then once you get in and you figure out that you're not being spoon fed, your versus like, um, I'm sorry if you hear my kids, it's half day today on Fridays. So, but it's kind of like a culture shock almost. It's like, I need to learn these things. I know I need to learn these things. This is what Spirit's saying. And even though I have like my monthly consultations with our godmother, there's still, she can only tell me so much within an hour, right? Like, and if I'm actively sitting down, like, okay, doing my daily divinations or whatever, and and this coming up, where do I start? So for me, I think the hardest part has been prioritizing what I need to learn at this given time, what lessons, and then also having grace with myself on, like, I'm not gonna learn and change my habits immediately. Like, it's not gonna happen. And so I think that for me, I make sure that I'm reading. I read a lot. Um, I research different things. And then I also communicate with my god sisters, with you, right? Like, um, this is what I thought about. What do you think? And it kind of had that dialogue back and forth on, like, so that I know that I'm headed in the right direction. Um, so it's not quite, what has been talked about, where it's like lone witching and you're just kind of learning on your own and then absorbing all this information, and just kind of going wild with it. Well, I wouldn't say everybody's going wild with it, but you know what I mean? Like, I'm also making sure that I'm on the right track with community, with my godparent, and letting Mambo Soleil know, hey, I'm interested in learning this. Is she won't know what I'm interested in learning until I tell her, right? And then kind of getting her feedback on what that looks like. Um, I think I answered your question though, in terms of balance.
You did answer my question, and even something that you said in regards to, like, going to Mambo Soleil and saying this is something that I'm interested in, or like this is something that I think I'm ready to learn. It reminded me, like, that's another aspect of ATRs that is different than like practicing more of like the Abrahamic faith, where in ATRs it's not the teacher. The teacher is not supposed to tell you what you're ready to learn or what you should be learning. It's the opposite, where you should be coming to them with what you want to learn or what you're ready to learn. And so, in terms of managing that balance on my end, I hope this is not like a cop out or a cliche, but I kind of tend to just be more like more spirit led. Like I am sitting with my spirits, I'm sitting with my ancestors, I'm sitting with my Loa, and I'm talking to them every single day about like what my path is, like what I should be learning, like how do they want me to show up, and that very much impacts um what next steps I take. But at the same time, so I have like kind of the input, my spiritual team's input, right? And then I just have personal interests. Like I am aware that because African traditional religion tends to be an oral tradition, that there's not going to be a ton of information available. But like you said, I still like to research. I still like to read. I'm just a naturally curious person. And so I'm always going to be searching for more information. And then based off of the information that I'm interested in and based off of, what my spiritual core is telling me, then, the input that I'm able to get from our godmother, that's kind of how I balance it in terms of personal responsibility. Like I am always aware that at the end of the day, like it really is on me. Like it's not my godmother's responsibility, like you said, to kind of spoon feed everything to me. One, I'm an adult, I am a grown up. Like there's always just going to be a certain amount of responsibility that you have in your journey, like as an adult. Um, and then as priestesses, there are certain responsibilities that, again, aren't our godmother's responsibilities. Those are our responsibilities that we chose when we decided to like walk on this path. And I think that that is another kind of misconception when people are transitioning out of, like, let's say Christianity, where, everything is kind of like taught to them versus I'm so sorry. I lost my train of thought. I'm gonna grab it. Um, versus wow, I really did lose it. I had a good point, I promise. Um, what was I saying? I was saying that transition responsibilities. So yes, okay. So like people they throw away like religion, they throw away dogma. Great. And then they're like they want to come into like ATRs and just think that they can do whatever they want, and they want to learn how to do all of this magic, and they want to work with like all of these other like deities or entities like Orisha or Loa, and they don't realize that like there's a responsibility to learning these things and to taking up these practices, and there's a responsibility, it goes back to actually what I was saying about like you can acquire all of this spiritual knowledge, but it's up to you to disseminate it responsibly. Because if you don't and you just do whatever you want, there are actual consequences. And I think that that's something that like people don't really take into consideration sometimes, is that like, I mean, everything you do technically has a consequence. Um, and so that's another reason why I take my personal responsibility in things so seriously.
Hmm. Well, I think you made an interesting point about being spirit led in terms of what you're learning. Like, I think very, very early, there's so many topics or things that you can learn about in terms of spirituality and like magic in general. And so in terms of like sitting still and letting spirit show you how to do things is very important as well. Like when I started doing energetic cord removals or cord cutting, that was something that I wanted to learn about. But like when you research, there's so many like different things on how to learn that, and people's opinions on what you need and how to go about that, right? But when I started to learn it, I was like told to wait first. And then, like, as I was sitting and I was praying about it, things came up where it's like, okay, I'm going to remove cords through connecting using water, right? So I use water and I scry, and there's a part of that um, aura of the person, or just that realm that I can see, which I can see all the interconnected chords and I can see the colors of the different chords. And so this is way more sophisticated and way more intricate than just light a candle and tie two strings for two people and just let's see if it actually cuts through, right? Like there's chords that shouldn't be cut. There's chords that aren't ready to be cut. And these are things that I am learning as Spirit is teaching me. And the way in which I do my cord removals is different than the way Mambo Soleil does it, right? So, yes, she can give me a foundational knowledge, but I then have to take that knowledge and listen to the spirits in my court, because too, again, when we're pulling knowledge from spirit, a lot of the times that comes from our ancestors and how they practice things. And so um as I'm taking her foundations of what she's taught me, it is then my responsibility to go further and to learn through how did my ancestors do this work, how am I meant to do this work, and update my grimoire based on that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, you made an interesting point about how, how you do something is different than Mambo Soleil would do something is different than I would do something. And a lot of that is because of like what your spirits expect of you and what your ancestral practices were. And I think that that's probably another reason that there's no central doctrine, because it really is, any ATR is really wanting you to connect with spirit to lead your decisions, to help you walk down your individual path. And so a lot of ATRs acknowledge that like not everybody is supposed to be a priestess, right? Like what your path looks like for you might not make sense for the next person. And so it doesn't make sense to have like a doctrine that kind of dictates, how you're supposed to show up. Like, and I think that's really, our ancestors are really smart. That's what I'll say. They're to even, account for that. Um,
I
yeah.
agree. What would you say to the new person looking to learn ATRs who haven't found a parent yet? Like, what responsibility at that point do they have to their own spiritual journey?
Wow, that's a great question, because I know last time I really talked about the importance of just finding community, period, and find and just, waiting and paying attention to who the right mentor could be. And so now you're asking, what is their responsibility in the meantime,
Mm-hmm.
essentially? Honestly, it's still that. I even said, and I'll always say, it starts with connecting with your ancestors. And you don't necessarily need a mentor to start building your relationship with your ancestors. Now, is it going to be important if you have community? Then that's when you're still able to, exchange thoughts and ideas with people, and you're still able to kind of get a little bit of feedback until, like, in the meantime, until you're waiting for that right mentor. But when I told you that I'm talking to, my spiritual court every day about, how they want me to show up, what my next steps would be, like, add that into your daily prayers. Like if this is something that you want to pursue, talk to your ancestors, like help me to find the right mentor, help me to find the right path. It takes nothing to pray and meditate each day
Mhm.
and ask your spirits, like, what do they expect of you from this point? Like at this point in your journey, like what is your responsibility? Because I think even that might vary depending on the person. Um, but I think even if, you know, no matter how, what path you take in African spirituality, or in spirituality in general, I think the Empress journey is so important because it doesn't just apply to
Mhm.
spirituality. And so like that's your responsibility. You're still responsible for growing in your areas of empathy and emotional intelligence. You're still responsible for growing in how you show up and how you take up space. You're still responsible for growing in how you ground yourself and how you take care of yourself. That doesn't stop just because you don't have a mentor.
Mhm. No, I totally agree. And then once you find that community, or you found that class, like, there are a lot of, I'm seeing it a lot more where people are offering like free classes on this or free classes on that. We have our free mentorship. And I mean, let's be honest, not everybody's going to go on from the free mentorship and jump into like charm school that Mambo has. And so at this point, you have a foundational piece of knowledge, and then making sure you build that connection with your ancestors, and making sure you're taking what you're learning and applying it is very important. um, I don't quite understand the purpose of just taking a class just to take it and having this information just to have it if you're not going to use it. And then once you know the information, you're responsible for knowing it. And you can't use the excuse, I don't know more. Or I mean, there's always that possibility that it's not for you, but there's still a certain level of, okay, I at least know that if I meditate every day, I'm not going to be as anxious anymore. Or if I eat fast every once in a while, um, then certain conditions are overeating or overspending on eating out. Those are all things in our life that we have to just own and be responsible about. So, like what you said, it's not just a spiritual journey. Like, eventually, your spiritual journey becomes a lifestyle. And um, I remember one time I had asked, like, what does spirit, in terms of my spiritual regimen, what does spirit want from me now? Like, is there certain days that I need to just wake up early and do this? Is there a certain diet that I need to have? And like the answer is like, it's not about having a set specific regimen that's too rudimentary for you. It's your lifestyle now. Like, it has become a part of your lifestyle. So doing the things, um my ancestors weren't concerned about what I'm doing, when I'm doing it, what time I'm waking up, am I going to not eat today, like that. That's not so much their care or worry, because I've been doing what I need to do. Now it's time to apply the things that I've learned. Why is fasting a certain day of the week important for me versus you, for example, right? Like, sometimes I have to go on a 4-day water fast, and that's important for my skin. It's important for um, just my overall health and my health conditions that may not be as important for you.
Yeah, I love what you said about application, and even in just you talking about how, you know, your spirits didn't really care about specific regimens and routines that you have as long as that you were doing them. And it made me think about, part of this is like moving and doing things with intention. So a lot of times, like, like you said, like people can just like go like take a class and they have this knowledge, and then what? And so it's not just like application, because I think that's a wall that people run into where they start to think like, oh, like if I do this regimen, or like, in our free mentorship, we teach about blessing your head each day, the head blessing from Ayanna Van Zant, tapping the power within. And people can kind of get stuck in like, okay, this is something that I learned that I should do and I have to do. And so I'm going to do this every day at this time. And then they might be wondering, why am I not getting the results I want?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a certain amount of like, one, I think, discernment, but two, responsibility that you have to check in with yourself and check in with your spirits. And if you're listening, like you said, it's a lot more about intentionally doing things. And how do you intentionally apply the knowledge that you have learned? Like, I sometimes like I have basically like the same kind of routines, but there are times when my spirits are like, okay, switch up the times, switch things up, just to make sure that you're not just on autopilot when you do it. Like you have to be intentional each and every time that you do something. And I think that is another pardon me, that's another responsibility that you have, is to approach whatever work that you're doing it with intention as well.
Yes, I totally agree. Um, do you feel that there's ever a point um, along the way that you just need to rest? Like, is that a part of our responsibility as uh, on this Empress journey, or as spiritualist priestess, that we also need to focus on?
Uh, yes, 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 absolutely. And that's something, that I think both the Queen of Pentacles and the Empress herself like really speak to and talk about in terms of like how you nurture yourself and how you ground yourself. And a lot of the times, like you do need to rest. It's important not to keep going and burning yourself out, and then you're like it's kind of counterproductive. Like if you would have taken time to rest and to recharge yourself, um even though it might seem like you're stopping like quote unquote productivity, for example, the time that you take to recharge, like you're able to then, like when you're ready to go again, like you're able to go like that much faster, or you're that much more productive, or you're doing that much more many things, or you're able to better pour into people because you've taken the time to rest and restore, yourself like throughout your journey. So I think that's really important, and that's something that I personally struggle with. Yeah, like that's a lesson that I'm learning a lot right now. Where I've gotten myself in situations where like I'm just going and I love to pour and help other people. But I don't always take the time that I need to nurture myself and to sit down and rest, because um there like there's always going to be somebody that needs help. There's always going to be a situation at work. There's always going to be something that happens in life. And I think part of, the wisdom of the Queen of Pentacles, and even the Queen of Swords, is having discernment and when you need to sit things out and take care of yourself versus when you need to be in action. So yes, taking the time to ground yourself and to rest is really important in your journey. And sometimes in your rest is when you might find you're really able to connect to spirit even more, because you're able to slow down your mind, slow down your body, and kind of clear away some of the distractions. And so you might find that in your times of rest are some of your deepest times of introspection or growth or connection with spirit. So yes, rest is definitely important in your journey. Um, yeah, like what do you think? What are your thoughts on regular
I agree
periods of
with you. Yeah, rest is very important. I would have to really agree. I think that being like feeling like you have the responsibility to one learn so much, you have the responsibility to do your certain regimens and hygiene habits, and then you have your responsibilities to work and to life and to kids and all of those things. But also, like you said, like if you're running on fumes, there's no way you can pour into everybody the same way you could if you were feeling healthy or, stable. I get a lot more anxious when I'm tired. I get a lot more overwhelmed when I'm tired or burned out. And the way I show up is not always the best. It's not the nicest. It's not, and so and then also, in terms of the downloads I'm receiving, or if I'm doing a divination, it's not as clear. I lose a lot of clarity when I am not paying attention to how much I'm resting. A lot of the information I take in, whether it be reading or listening, it just kind of comes in and goes out, or I don't fully understand or comprehend. So I would say rest is a very important part of being responsible on this journey.
You brought up a really good point in terms of how lack of rest has its own consequences. Like for in your case, like you're more anxious, you can't think as clearly. I also tend to feel like more overwhelmed um, when um, when I'm not getting as much rest, and so like things that I know, like if I had taken the time to just like sit and recharge myself and then go, like I could handle no problem. Like they
Mm.
feel like they stack up when you're not taking the rest that you need to. Um, so, like, what does taking rest look like for you now?
Sometimes that means like I'm scheduling time to literally just lay there. Like, and our other times it's like what do I have capacity for, right? Like, is there some administrative work I can do versus interacting with people? And so it may be minimizing the amount of work I am doing throughout the day. Um, it's going out into nature. I love to go into a spring and just kind of stand there for a minute and refresh and replenish. Um, Also, it's reminding myself that certain things can wait. Like there's not such an urgency. So if I need to take a break from a certain responsibility and go spend time with my family, especially my dad, to feel recharged or reinvigorated, uh, I think I said that right. That's something that I need to go and do. Um, and it's just allowing myself to take that moment. What about you?
Yes, I like what you said. Even just like scheduling or allowing yourself to just lay there. There's something powerful about even just giving yourself permission to rest.
Mhm.
Because we live, at least in the US, we live in a capitalistic society that's always go, 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 go. And so sometimes it can be hard to like want to lean into the rest because then you're looked at as like lazy or like unproductive, and that can kind of get stuck in your head. And so it's really powerful to give yourself permission to rest first. And in terms of like what I'm doing right now, I'm working. I had to work on giving myself permission to rest. But similarly, I talked about earlier in the live where I'm giving myself permission to start my days off slower and to myself and setting boundaries with other people so that I can get the rest that I need. I also love going outside to recharge. If there is water, going to some type of water source like a creek
Mhm.
is something that I enjoy doing to rest. And I like that you differentiated. I don't know if you like you're aware that you differentiated the difference between like resting and recharging because you do need both.
Mhm.
And so I'm actively looking for ways to recharge myself because I am aware that, rest is great, but you also need those activities or those people who are going to also pump and like recharge you as well. And honestly, like for me, like even just like reading something silly that has like nothing to do with like spirituality. Like I like cheesy romance novels. Like that is my like rest and my recharge. And so even just finding other activities that make you or your inner child happy,
Mhm.
I think are really good ways and like how I try to engage myself in rest and recharging and restoring.
Right. So I think and I hope that through our time spent today that we were able to um, explore like wisdom on embracing responsibility in terms of like our intentions and our actions and self-care. Um, and I think that um, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to process my thoughts, but I do hope that, like, in terms of like what we talked about, how would you summarize our responsibilities to our own journey and our own spiritual growth?
Don't mind me. I'm just having a coughing attack over here.
Okay, so I would say, like, okay, if we go back to um, in terms of the lessons that we learned from each queen, I do believe that we've covered in terms of just the responsibility to show up authentically, the responsibility to our own emotional intelligence and how we show up that way, and and our responsibility to nurture ourselves and our self-care, and then also our responsibility to set boundaries.
Yes. Yes, I agree. Yes, the responsibility to take ownership of our learning, our spiritual growth, our mental growth, um, taking back our responsibility and even restoring ourselves. And then, just our general responsibility. Um, no, actually, that really covers it. I think between what you and I said in terms of our responsibility to navigate each of the Queens of Cups and the Empress Journey. That really starts with our own initiation and our responsibility to listen to spirit and our responsibility to just want to be better than we were yesterday.
Mhm. Totally agree. We thank you all for joining us today. And we look forward to continuing to go live each week and to talk more about the Empress Journey, starting with the queens. Um, I think the first queen that we're going to talk a little bit more about is going to be the Queen of Cups. And I look forward to seeing you all next week.
Yes, and where can people find you?
Oh, yes. So I will post my link tree in the comment section, but I am Hunsi Ferdasi on Facebook, um, Hunsi underscore Ferdasi on Instagram, The Exceptional You on TikTok, and my website is theexceptionalyou.com.
Awesome. And you can find me, I'm Hunzi Lovana on Facebook, but everywhere else you can find me as Lovana Conjure. And I'll put links to my website and stuff as well. And then, no, and then my actual website is harmonioushealing.com. You can find me there.
And do you have any offerings at this time?
Yes, if you are interested in learning more about dream interpretation or how to, tap into the magic of your dreams in terms of manifestation or prosperity, I am having a dream alchemy workshop that is going to start November 10th. It runs November 10th through December 7th. And we're going to dig more into how to tap into the magic of your dreams from a cultural perspective. So, leaning more into African traditional religion to guide us through that journey. But then also just some general psychological and biological tidbits about dreams as well. So if that interests you, um, I can drop a link to that as well. Look out for links if you're in the Facebook group. They're around as well. So yeah, that's what I'm doing.
All right. Well, I enjoyed today's talk. You have a good rest of your day, everybody. Bye bye.
Yes. Bye.